by the way. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do. Here come bad news, talking this and that. Give me all you got and don't hold it back. I should probably warn you, I'll be just fine. No offense to you, don't waste your time. Here's why. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do. Bring me down, can't none bring me down. Your love is too high. Bring me down, can't none bring me down. I said, bring me down, can't none bring me down. Your love is too high. Bring me down, can't none bring me down. I said, because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do. Bring me down. Can't none bring me down. Love is too high. Bring me down. Can't none.
What's that? No, I'm not even part. I'm just the MC. Hot mic. Yo, that was a killer panel. We're going to get rolling in the next couple of minutes just for people to know. The next panel is going to be no, that was the last one. Things happening in the world of psychedelic, or it is nurses. Perfect. Okay, yes, thank you. We're doing the nurses' role in entheogenic medicine. Nurses' role in entheogenic medicine. So I'm going to give people a moment to clear out and we'll get rolling so we can keep on schedule. But I hope everyone's having a very fruitful time here, pun intended, right? I'm a mushroom cultivator, so we like to fruit things. So hope y'all are having a fruitful time, making connections, finding out about new things, and keeping it light-spirited. So I love being out in Miami. Man, it's so good out here. I was out on a boat, I mentioned. That was just like, for me, I'm landlocked, so I'm not accustomed to it. But we're going to get rolling really shortly here. So I want to hand the mic over just so we can keep on schedule. So, all right, who's moderating this one? I think it's Kaya, right?
5 more hours, we're just getting started.
5 more hours, we're just getting started.
Also, can we give a shout out to the sound team, to the audio visual one time? You know what I mean? Let's give a shout out one time. These are the unsung heroes of every event. You know they say like tip your bartenders. Let's definitely make sure we show some love to the AV team because they've been here learning, soaking up all the intel, and they never get the recognition that they deserve. So thank you all very much. I appreciate you. Thank you. You're making us all, they make my job easy, right? Sound good, look good in the lights. You take the AV team away, I'm a C+ at best. All right, so I'm gonna hand the mic over right now, and this is about the role of the nurse in entheogenic medicine. Who needs a mic?
All right. You guys are here for the best panel of the day. We've got the psychedelic and cannabis nurses in the house. Whoop, whoop. Thank you so much for being here. I am Kaya Roman. I was very honored to be asked to moderate this panel with these incredible angels. I am a huge fan of nurses. My dad is a nurse, my stepdad is a nurse, and then I was realizing my mom's latest boyfriend was also a nurse, and then I'm like, okay, my mom has a thing for nurses. But fun fact, nurses have been voted the most trusted profession by the Gallup poll for the past 21 years running. 22. Yeah, exactly. So we're going to get into, what these amazing nurses do, but let me just tell you a little bit about myself. I wrote a book about the neuroscience of joy called The Joy Plan, and that book became a bestseller. It was on the Today Show. The anchors of the Today Show followed it for a week, and this was before I had ever had a psychedelic experience. And there's a whole story about how I finally had a psychedelic experience, and then I realized, oh my God, these psychedelics do what I was talking about in my book. They create extra neuroplasticity so we can create the conditions for joy in the brain. I have to tell everybody about this. But then I realized, the only psychedelic that's legal right now is ketamine. And so I started an at-home telemedicine company for people to do ketamine treatment at home called KetaMD. And we were designing it from the beginning and trying to figure out, well, how do we do this? Like, people usually go to a clinic, but we want to create an environment at home where people feel comfortable to do their treatments. What will make people feel comfortable? Nurses. And so at KetaMD, every treatment is guided by a nurse over telemedicine, and I had the great honor of meeting many, many nurses and coming up with how to train and how do nurses do a telemedicine ketamine treatment, and that's how I actually met Colleen and Pete, who put on Canadelic when I was recruiting nurses for KetaMD, and helped them have some of their very first psychedelic experiences. So it's just amazing what nurses do and how comfortable they make people feel and how much healing nurses bring to the world. So I'm very, very honored to be here. And I'm going to let these wonderful ladies introduce themselves. So let's get started here with Nurse Laura. Thank you.
Hi there. Thank you. Nurse, not technologically sound. Hi, I'm Nurse Laura. I am a registered nurse with a bachelor's, an MBA, and a couple of businesses. And for the past 7 years, I've been working in cannabis, helping patients, not to certify them to become a medical patient, but to help them figure out how to handle that cannabis journey. And really, it's so interesting because being here at a psychedelic conference talking about a real journey, a ceremony, and integration, it's kind of funny because I think about how I call myself an integrative medicine nurse, but I don't do a lot of integration with psychedelics, and I'm thinking I have a lot to learn. I'm going to learn a lot this weekend for sure. But what I really do is I mostly help people figure out how to integrate a little bit of cannabis and maybe a lot of cannabis into their medical regimen, concentrating on the fact that they are maybe using some prescribed medications and asking, like our last panel, asking about what they're doing at home. Are they going for walks? Are they eating healthy? Are they getting sleep? Do they have a spiritual life? Do they have a support person? Like all of these things that I think to so many of us would seem like common sense, but sometimes if you're lost, you're just lost. And you need like a mama there telling you and reminding you what to do. And so as a nurse, that's kind of what I do. But anyhow, enough about me. Ask Nurse Laura. I also have another organization that hopefully we'll talk about later that helps to promote this across the country for all of us and for all of you.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Hayes. I have a company called Compassionate Care Nursing Services. like most nurses I know that get into this work, have a personal story behind how he ended up here. 7 years ago, I was working as an oncology nurse. I went to work. I lost the ability to walk. I could only crawl. Allopathic medicines gave me life-shortening side effects. While I ran a boat hotel in Amsterdam, Holland, in my 20s after my first art degree, I hadn't used cannabis in years. I had a beloved family member who was in recovery for addiction, so I was not quick to jump on the, oh, I'll use cannabis. And it was actually this loved one who convinced me that, you know, medicinal benefits of cannabis would be key. And I thought, maybe I'll educate myself. And then I became a staunch advocate and educator for cannabis. And then I started hearing about MDMA being used for therapy and psilocybin. And I was like, please, I live in Miami, you know? And I thought, I heard myself and thought, wow, that's a lot of judgment. Maybe I need to pause and educate myself on the medicinal side of entheogens as well, which I did. And so now I am also a staunch advocate and educator for the medicinal use of all plant medicines, and also for the people that have been educating and using plant medicines for centuries before those of us have come along. So I think it's key not just to get involved, but to really pause and involve those who have been here in plain sight always, and do what we can to bring them in the light as well, and them into the green in all sides of it as well, as we all move forward. So I educate, advocate. I work with second generational curandero in Mexico, who's from the Huaraqui tribe. I work with, starting to work with medicine woman down there, who teaches other women, both in Mexico and abroad, to become medicine women, and all the while understanding and trying to continue to learn my role in it. And it's not as leader, it's as listener first and foremost, and then as educator and opening doors where, you know, this is how I can use my white privilege, but making sure it's at the side of, not in front of, others who, you know, have protected and championed these medicines forever. So that's what I do.
Hi, I'm Jessica Moreau, medical cannabis nurse and yoga instructor. I come from 20 years of dialysis experience, and most, like the other nurses, you know, it's my own journey, my own healing journey that brought me to plant medicine. Throughout my nursing career in dialysis, I kind of started evolving, and I'm still evolving, and my career is still evolving. And so it didn't resonate with me anymore, and so I decided to step out of corporate nursing in 2019. And so in my own path, you know, finding yoga, going back to my yoga, my mentor passed away last year, about this time last year, and that really hit hard, and really put me in a place where I found myself into more evolution. And so in 2019, I continued my yoga practice, and still wasn't figuring out what I wanted to do. And so within my own journey, I suffered from depression, from anxiety, taking multiple medications, self-numbing, coming home from work with anxiety, you know, after a 13, 14-hour shift, and, you know, self-numbing with, you know, a glass of wine and Benadryl and all of that, and it just wasn't working for me. It really wasn't. And so I found medical cannabis, and then I found ketamine therapy, and I actually started working for a clinic, and learned so much there. But throughout that journey, I evolved again and decided to go back to my roots. So now I'm teaching yoga, and I've brought in medical cannabis along with that. And so I'm working with clients one-on-one, depending on what their diagnosis is or what their goal is, whether it's anxiety or depression, I've worked with post-surgery patients, tumors. So I build a care plan based on that and help the client. A lot of clients that do come to me, they don't want to use opioids for recovery, and they really want more direction. And because I've had that experience with the dialysis realm and a lot of help with medication management, I've been able to tie all that in and really not allowing myself to fit into like one certain bubble, allowing myself to evolve throughout my career. And so that's kind of where I'm at. I'm going back to school to be a nurse practitioner, psychiatric nurse practitioner, and hopefully one day build my own practice to where instead of, medication management to bring clients into, big pharma, and sometimes, it's inevitable, but I'd like to bring it more to a plant-based type style of medication management and helping the older population, kind of figure out that space, because so much you hear people over-medicate or, under-medicate, and they don't feel, the benefits of the medicine. So just having somebody alongside of them, coaching them and helping them and guiding them. So that's my goal, and I'm still evolving, and thank you.
Hi, my name's Dawn Marie Steenstra, and I am one of the first 36 cannabis nurses in the country who is in West Palm Beach with Mary Lynn Mathry when we decided to make this a thing. So I've been doing cannabis nursing for about a decade. I actually come from a assisted living, long-term care, skilled nursing facility, rehab, community health, that edge of nursing. So I've dealt with my elders my whole life. I had my own assisted living from the age of 21 for 21 years after that, taking care of psych patients that were being thrown out of the psychiatric hospital up the road from where I lived. I realized that these people would be on the street, and I had a big house, and I wanted to stay home and raise my kids, so I decided to open up my home to these patients. Little did I know that this is where everything would evolve to. It's interesting because I'm kind of like a former long-term care nurse. I'm a former pain patient. I took narcotics for 18 years and had various procedures done on me to try to get rid of pain from a serious car accident years ago. And I actually fell into cannabis completely by accident. I was divorced and looking to date, and I met my husband online. And we dated for about a month before I knew what he really did for a living. And it's really kind of funny because he took me to That Patient's Out Time conference out in Arizona. Yes. And I sat there because I had just been through breast cancer about a year before I met my husband. And I was also a hospice nurse, so I was very frustrated with pharmaceuticals and the limitations of pharmaceuticals with my patients, and the Dr. Kevorkian feeling I had, the last time I gave a patient the last shot of morphine that did them in about 20 minutes. So I went to this conference, and I sat there with my mouth open because, I tried cannabis when I was 14, and I loved it because it chilled me out. And then here I am later learning that cannabis has been sitting there all this time, forbidden to us. And it could have helped so many of my patients. It could have helped me when I went through my journey. So I became like a really rabid cannabis advocate after that. And, I found out about, we were going to start this Cannabis Nurses Association. And I thought, I think I want to do this. So that was over a decade ago, 12 years ago now. And I'm happy to say now that I am a clinical director of dispensaries in Maryland. I take care of 15 different dispensaries. I work with comorbid, difficult patients that have complicating, conditions, have medications that they need to be evaluated. And I basically help that patient, like Laura. Laura is also a clinical director. And we help guide patients in their cannabis journey in the safest way possible. In addition to that, together we formed an organization called the National Clinical Director Consortium, and we're trying to make sure that the medical stays in medical cannabis because cannabis tends to have its limitation, And when cannabis ends, psychedelics begin. So we have a long way to go together, and I think it's going to be an awesome journey. So thank you.
Wow, thank you so much to all of you for your incredible dedication and your amazing work. Now, I am hearing the term cannabis nurse, and I'm super ignorant on cannabis. I know that I was having trouble sleeping, and so people were like, cannabis can help. It is not that simple. No, there's like all these different strains. Some help, some make it worse. So, what do you guys do? That's really what I want to know. I'm guessing you would have a patient like me who's like, I'm having trouble sleeping. How do I use cannabis? But what does a cannabis nurse do? That's my question for each one of you. As a cannabis nurse, what do you do? How does it work? How does a patient hire you? How do you help them? And then second part is, do you see psychedelics being added into the mix, and how would that work?
I'm just going to start it off with, was it 2015 or 2017 that the National Council of State Board of Nursing, which oversees all nursing licenses, came out with guidelines that every single nurse, no matter what their field, anyone with a LPN, RN, NP needs to follow in regards to cannabis. Wow. We're in 2023. Most nurses don't know it exists. Most hospitals don't know it exists. Most nursing directors don't know it exists. And that's criminal, because these are our guiding guidelines. This is our governing body. And I'm sure one of you guys remember which year, but
I want to say it was 2017.
Yeah,
That
2017.
sounds about right.
And still, people don't know about it. And anyone that has a clinic or wants to get interested or involved in it, they're a great place to start, because these are common sense, important guidelines of what every single nurse needs to know and should be doing. And yet the majority have no idea. So there is no current specialty cannabis nurse. So all of us who call ourselves cannabis nurse work diligently and passionately, but we don't have a certificate that is worth its weight in wood that says cannabis nurse. We can go to courses, but until it becomes an actual
We just heard all the education for it.
specialization.
Yeah, I'm seeing a certification program in the future.
So if anybody teaches nurses, we got to get questions on the NCLEX.
Yes.
Because if there's not
Correct.
questions on the NCLEX about cannabis or psychedelics, then it can't be taught. It's got to
Right.
first be there, because this is
Right.
the way of the world, right?
So you guys are really the trailblazers then that are creating this whole new era and genre of nursing. So tell me what you do.
So it's really important to hear that information, to
Yeah.
understand that there is a path forward, there is some safety, there is some approval. We need a lot more. Like you said earlier about the ketamine, we need more research. There are many things that we do need. But generally, when someone calls one of us up and says, hey, I can't sleep, someone told me to take cannabis, what should I do? If you're in a state that has a medical program, because just in case, since we're at a psychedelic conference, cannabis is federally illegal. It's a state-based program, so some states have medical use, some states have adult or recreational use, some states have both. In Maryland, Florida has medical only, right? No adult use yet.
Correct. Not yet.
And Maryland has medical only, but we just voted by referendum for adult use, but it's not in place yet, maybe this summer. So usually the person has to become a medical patient. That's
Okay.
a process. Usually requires some kind of a doctor or nursing certification. And then generally, like if you get me, you might not be happy. I kind of feel like I'm the anti-cannabis nurse. People call me, they say, hi, I can't sleep, I got a card, what gummy should I take? And I'm like, hold up, why don't you sleep?
Right.
Do you have a bedtime routine? Do you get daylight in the morning? Right? Because
What medication are you on?
Yeah. We're nurses.
First and foremost.
Nurses are about holistic practices. We want to take care of your whole self. And so I'm not just going to tell you what gummy to take. Honestly, the dispensary can tell you an indica gummy or a sleep gummy or something. Right. But it might make it worse.
Right.
So, like, what I want to know is, do you fall asleep? Do you stay asleep? How many times do you get up at night? Do you take any medications? Like, do you have any type of bedtime ritual? Again, do you get daylight in the morning? Are you hearing a theme? Go outside, take a walk in the morning, get some daylight on your eyeballs, okay? So it's a process. And then usually we're asking a little bit about medications because cannabis is not right for everyone, just like maybe ketamine and other even prescription drugs, right? It is not a one-stop shop. There isn't one size fits all. And so it might be that you take a medication that doesn't work great with cannabis, or something else could work better. Like, there are just things to consider. And so people like us, we're studying this, and we have our healthcare background because, like Dawn Marie mentioned, comorbidities, like if you have other things going on, like diabetes, hypertension, heart, right? There are things that matter. It's not just anyone can take a gummy. So I'm going to stop because I want you guys to talk too. But
Well,
that's
no-
a step. That's a beginning.
Yeah, no, for sure. And not every gummy is going to affect the person the same. So that's kind of, where they need our guidance. And, for me, I kind of stumble onto my clients, you know what I mean? It's like I teach a yoga class and then somebody comes and then they ask me, and it's like you said, I have to dig a little deeper. Like, let's schedule something and let's sit down, and I gotta even know your shoe size, you know what I mean? Like, I gotta know everything. Like, what are you ingesting? Not just like orally, but what are you ingesting, what's your atmosphere around? And, same thing, are you going for a walk? Are you exercising? What does that look like to you? And what are your goals? Because not everybody's goals are the same. But it's the comorbidities as well, taking those into accountability, because our metabolism is going to be different, and what works for one person is not going to work for the other. And unfortunately, some clients end up just getting whatever their friend might recommend, or what works for their friend, but they're not taking into consideration all the other aspects of why we would suggest something versus something else, one thing versus something else.
Can I just say one thing about the friend? That is, like, you shared the statistic about how we're so trusted. Well, everybody tells us their secrets. Well, my
Yes,
friend.
yes,
My
yes.
child. Well,
Yes.
there's a lot of grandchildren giving their grandmas their weed. Let me just tell you, there's a lot of that going on.
That is the truth. It's funny because I deal mostly with elderly people because that's what I've dealt with my entire life, from the time I was a child all the way up till now. So I like to work with seniors. But I think, because I'll just take it from what I do, working with my seniors. I mean, I go into retirement communities and I'll give a lecture on Cannabis 101. And it's so funny because inevitably, the one question they all ask me is, do you have any samples? And I feel so bad because I don't. But anyway, this is the fun of my job now. I mean, I took care of people who were hopeless in nursing homes, who had been basically left and felt like they were left to die. And now I'm actually helping people instead of keeping them on that merry-go-round of healthcare that we have that's so broken right now. And I think the most important part of our job as nurses is education, because most patients that come to us either know this much about cannabis or think they know this much about cannabis. And, most of the time, we need to educate people on, what are the different cannabinoids? Getting high is not necessarily what you want to do. Getting very high is not necessarily something you want to do. We have to teach them safety with their medicine to make sure it stays out of the hands of children, make sure it stays away from their puppy dogs. I remember one of the first experiences with one of my mentors, actually, who taught me from Americans for Safe Access how to go before legislators and talk, with knowledge. And his dog had gotten into his chocolates. So the first thing I'm thinking as a nurse is, oh my God, chocolate is going to kill the dog. Not even thinking about the THC, right? So, his dog fell asleep, obviously. But the dog wouldn't wake up. So he's freaking out. He's like, should I take the dog to the vet? I'm like, give it 24. Dog will be fine. And, I wasn't worried that the dog was going to die because nothing, cannabis has a very, very good safety factor. But, as I said, education's so important because most patients really don't know or understand how cannabis works as a healthcare agent. So many disease processes I've seen literally stopped in its tracks, okay? I mean, when I first came into this, I thought this is the most miraculous thing I've ever heard of. And I can honestly say I've seen miraculous things with cannabis as well. So I am thrilled at the aspect that mental health, those patients I took care of back in the 80s, could have been helped by all of this. All of it. So I'm hoping that this actually gets put into facilities, and we're working on that now, and I'm hoping that we actually get cannabis and cannabinoid therapies and psychedelic therapies in long-term care, assisted living, and nursing homes, not just hospice.
I want to just say, and I'm not sure of your guys' view on this, but I do see a difference in terms of nurses educating and working with patients with cannabis and psychedelics, in terms of, do we need to have our own personal experiences with the various medicines in order to be working with patients doing it? As an oncology nurse, I did not have to take chemotherapy to educate on the very complicated regimes of the various chemotherapies.
Right.
Cannabis is an incredibly complicated medication that can be incredibly beneficial or not. I do believe you can educate on that without experiencing it personally. Psychedelics, however, are a very different medicine, and it's not just about side effects, etc. And I think whether a nurse or somebody else is supporting somebody through their journey, they do have to have personal experience because it is unique. And so it's not just on the page. And so, I mean, I don't know if you guys agree with me. It's
Absolutely.
very
I absolutely
controversial.
agree.
I agree with that.
But I do think that if we're going to be helping other people, we need to have our own personal experiences, and not experiences, but journeys. And there's no way of getting around doing your work with any of this medicine. You can take the medicine and have a great experience to talk about on Monday when you go back to work. But if you don't do your work, the universe is going to come calling and hit you harder, and why you did it in the first place can get worse. So you really have to understand, and it's something that if you don't have that experience, if you don't put in the time, if you don't put in your work ahead of time, you're not going to be able to be effective. And I do think as nurses, that's our ultimate goal, is wanting to be effective. You know, the other thing I think with cannabis that we do, we can teach patients how to stretch their medicine. This stuff is expensive, let's be honest. You know, so there's ways of like that we can legally within our realm teach you how to make your own sugarless gummies. Because, you know, newsflash, sugar and pain, not so good. Most of the sugar, you know, most of the gummies commercially are loaded with sugar.
Yes.
So just things like that. And that's within our scope of practice that we can legally do. So nurses legislate, advocate, create. Roll with the punches because the supplies are low, whatever it is. So whatever industry, whatever point you are in the line, patient, producer, reporter, get with the nurse. We will benefit. You know, that 22 years of trust did not come from nowhere. And we take it seriously.
Truth.
So, go ahead.
go ahead, go ahead.
Yes. The saving people money, I just want to say, like, that's one of the number one things I do. Even sometimes, like, if I'm visiting a dispensary and I see a patient and they're like, oh, yeah, that's nice that you do that, but no, like, I know what I'm doing. And I'm like, do you want to save money? Schedule an appointment with me. I bet you I can save you $10 a week. You know, and it's really true because we figure out, once we figure out what your dose is, once we figure out what works, we can tell you what machine to buy, how to make it yourself, how to make it better, how to tweak it to really fit your needs, because it's really true. There's a lot of sugar in the edible products, and most of our anti-inflammatory, all the stuff people are dealing with, they don't need more sugar.
Well, cancer as well, you know?
Yeah, very true. And legislate, and I'm gonna.
Thank you. Oh, I love you all so much. Thank you so much for just, you know, being these pioneers and recognizing that, of course, nurses who care about the holistic whole being of their patient and their health should be considering how can cannabis fit into this whole picture and how can psychedelics fit into this whole picture. And like you, I would like to see many, many more nurses playing a role in this, what's our panel called? Entheogenic medicine future that we're all birthing forward. So I would love to hear, like, what's your vision for that? How can that happen? I know there's some organizations, there's Psychedelic Nurses Association, there's a few, but it's kind of scattered, and there's no guidelines, there's no standard of care, there's no certification programs. So I'd love to hear your ideas from the pioneers for, nurses
There
of
are
the
those
future.
guidelines, just
Okay.
people don't
People
know
don't
they
know
exist.
about them.
But they are there.
They're
Yes.
Yeah. Not with psychedelics yet, but yeah.
Well, and as I
Yeah,
mentioned,
yeah.
I think that it's going to be a continuation of care. Like, I think that integrative medicine is truly going to be integrative medicine.
Right.
Cannabis was just my first, waylay into entheogenic plants. To think that where cannabis leaves off, psychedelics can take up. I have so many patients that are dealing with serious bipolar, serious PTSD. Cannabis can help so far with these things, but at a certain point you need something more, whether that's therapy, whether it's, psychedelic medicine along with therapy, along with integration. We're finding this out. But I think that, my role of over a decade in cannabis medicine, I feel like I've already taken one of the entheogenic classes to learn about whole plant and mushrooms and ayahuasca and all these other things. But I will tell you, though, it did kind of piss me off as a nurse and as a cannabis nurse when they fast-tracked ketamine. After all the years we've been advocating for legalization of cannabis, it's like, come on. But it's a very good thing. I'm finding that I need to adjust and open my brain and realize that
Had
if it
nothing
helps
to do with
people-
pharmaceutical dollars.
Yeah, pharmaceutical as well. Yeah, I agree with that. But, pharma wants their piece. They're going to get their piece. We know they're going to get their piece. And as, I think there is room for everybody in this box. I really do. I think that there's a way to go botanical. I think there's a way to go with dispensaries. I think there's a way to go with the FDA. I think there's a way to go with all these different organizations. But they're going to have to break cannabis up into different classifications for that. As far as the rest of the entheogenics, I'm not sure how that's going to go. But if it works, it works. Right. Because, cannabis, one thing cannabis cannot reach is deep depression. And right now, we're in a very depressed society. Yeah. Everybody needs a little bit of this right now. Yeah. So why can't we as nurses take what we know and run with it and teach people how to really feel better in this world that we live in, one step at a time.
Well, one tool at a time, too, because, the integration, the holistic aspect, yoga, joy, where are you bringing these things in? Because just using cannabis, just using an entheogenic is not going to do it. You need herbal medicine, you need clean eating, you need, it's like being I say a Twinkie vegan, don't eat any meat, but
Take a walk.
but live on horrible food that's not healthy, So I think, a lot of people can say that cannabis is a gateway drug, an exit drug, really, not the gateway. And it also can start, someone can start at various points and continue to move on, but it's a wheel of holistic living that we have to incorporate, and that as nurses we can help guide people. I had someone in my church ask me last week about could I help them with cannabis, and in talking with them and listening, I ended up sending them to a tea shop because there was no way they were going to be able to afford, they could afford the $75 state card, but they couldn't afford the medicine or a doctor to recommend it. And they were just trying to lower their blood pressure, in another way. And it was like,
What state is it, 75?
yeah, here it's
Here,
75
75 for the state?
for the state.
Wow, Maryland's only 25.
Oh, no.
Maryland.
Yeah, and that's nothing compared to the rest of it, what it costs here. So, I guided them to a herbal tea shop, and it's, as nurses, we also start in one point, but then grow and follow the web of connection. And that's what we bring as well to the table, is just also naturally always focusing on what's best for our patients and what do we need to get there. And that also lies true with social services. We can do all this talk about using this medicine that can be incredibly expensive we can intellectually talk about its spiritual aspects, but then what about we go on these, to all these various countries for these journeys, and the curanderos that we're coming to use it do not have access to water. So we need to be involved in raising all that up as well. There's an organization out there, Sharkruna, that works with reciprocity. I suggest everybody stops by their table and just begins to educate themselves. If you have any interest in any of this medicine, we have an obligation to get involved and educate ourselves on the full aspects of these medicines.
Yeah, I know it was early this morning. The first session was at 9 a.m. It was a pretty empty room, so I'm guessing not a lot of you were here. But I want to share with you, since you weren't here, and I don't see any of the speakers that were on that, amazing medicine men type people were up here on stage. They sang a song, they played an instrument, said a prayer. It was a spiritual opening. Talk about to talk about this medicine. And it was the most beautiful thing, and it just really did kind of ground me and remind me. First of all, we all know we kind of commercialize cannabis. It really does seem like we have to be so careful to remember that part of the amazing thing about the psychedelic medicine is the spiritual aspect. And what changes people's lives and helps them to get out of something is that spiritual aspect. And I want to be honest, I haven't had a psychedelic experience yet. I'm here because I want to learn and I want to, but I just haven't been ready yet. And so I don't counsel patients on psychedelics because I don't feel qualified, because I agree with you.
Yeah.
But I want to.
Take my number.
Well, like I said, Laura, we're on a mission from God. We really are. This is cannabis is a natural plant that was given to us. The mushrooms, ayahuasca, all of it, they're natural things that were given to us. To me, it's like, how dare a government tell me I can't have something?
Yeah.
I work with it. I do legislative work, and I hate it with a passion. But, whatever it takes, for patients' sake. And my son was a Ghostbusters fan and Blues Brothers and all that, and all I think about is that mission from God statement. I'm like, I have to integrate that somehow into my practice.
I was just going to say that as nurses, we all have a different path. We all have a different niche, something different to bring to the table. And it's very important for us to keep a network amongst each other, because something that Laura, we can all work together and we can all, offer out something different in the table, and our patients can benefit from that, And so that's the beautiful thing, not limiting ourselves to with the medicine,
Yeah, thank you. So for other nurses that are out there that are thinking, wow, my job's really stressful and people aren't getting better, or there's a lot of things happening in the medical system that I don't agree with, or that are just hard. I would like to have more of a holistic approach. I'd like to be able to talk to my patients about cannabis and psychedelics, and I want to have the experience myself, or be more educated myself and get into this field. I hear there's nurses doing this, but how do I do it?
Just do it.
What advice do you have for nurses out there that might be listening?
Join the Cannabis Nurse Network. Join the American Cannabis Nursing Association, International Psychedelic Nursing Association. Stop any one of us and say, who are the people that are good, that are doing the good work?
Start talking about it.
Yeah, and start talking about it. And there is a space, there's some nurses that once they come out of nursing school and do their first year, they never want to touch a live patient again. And the beauty of nursing is you can change your career within nursing as many times as you want.
Let it evolve.
I am one of those old school nurse. I will never want to leave the patient's side. No matter what I'm doing, I always want to still have hands-on with patient experience. But I also am a staunch advocate. There's some nurses who are incredible advocates or want to get into the legal side of things, or they are more entrepreneurial and want to have a product. So any point, nurses can get involved, but they just need to reach out and educate themselves. You know, educate not just externally, but, you know, there's so many sources to begin to educate, and there's national and there's open nurses, there's all kinds of nursing organizations that are out there willing and able to help other nurses get involved, and is needed. It is so desperately needed.
Yeah, Laura and I started out a long, long time ago before Maryland even had a program. Because we were nurses, we're like, people have to know. They have to understand. They have to know what's coming so that they're prepared. So, you know, we had just gotten together with a group of people who were interested in cannabis and the program coming up. And we had about, I think at one point, we had 82 medical professionals who were interested in our group just to go out and do a public campaign of educating about our program and what cannabis could do for you. And, you know, we had thought of all kinds of neat things that now we might have a chance to actually do them. You know, but I'm already arguing with officials about the advertising. How are people going to know unless you do PSAs when you bring in a legalization program? That would be the quickest way for people to learn, is a good PSA on TV. Public service announcement, the Maryland Cannabis Program is doing this. This is what you need to know. 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes.
Yeah, really interesting point about adult use. So again, just if you're in a state that is adding or converting from medical use to adult use cannabis, then the patient numbers, the calls are coming out of the woodwork, because it's like all of a sudden, wow, it's okay now because it's becoming recreational or adult use. And so all of a sudden the people that want to become medical patients, because there are definitely benefits to staying a medical patient even though there's an adult use program, and all of a sudden the curiosity, people are less afraid to ask. They're coming out more. Interestingly enough, though, and it's this way in all the states except for California, even if there is a medical use program, you can't bring your medicine to the hospital or to a healthcare facility. So particularly for people with seizure disorders or previous opioid abuse and are off of it and potentially using cannabis now or found cannabis as the only medication that works. Now you go into the hospital, even for a voluntary procedure, and the first thing they give you for your pain is an opioid. Yep. So that's a huge concern for me personally and for the groups that I work with. So in Maryland, we are in Annapolis advocating. So California passed Ryan's Law last year. You can look up on the Cannabis Nurses Network or just search for Ryan's Law. It allows medical cannabis for terminal patients only in healthcare facilities in California. It's the first state to pass. 16 other states are working on legislation similar to Ryan's Law now, Maryland being one of them. And we are in Maryland, we're asking for all medical cannabis patients, not just terminal, we're hoping. We'll see what happens. But anyhow, definitely opportunities to get into lobbying and policy making. They have no idea. Any legislators in the room?
Of course not.
Because they want to hear from us. They don't know. Like, they're making decisions, they're voting for things they don't even know about. It's mind-blowing to me. So you don't have to be a nurse to do it, but if you are a nurse, why not? Use what you have to give back, right, in that way.
We also do, though, have to talk about the reality of nurses who are legal cannabis patients in various states are losing their jobs. Because, like Florida, for example, is an at-will state. So just because you have a card does not mean you're guaranteed employment. You could be, have multiple prescriptions for a variety of opioids and everything else, and your job is protected. But if you are a legal cannabis patient, you have no protection. So nurses are putting themselves on the line every day depending on who they work for, to fight for it, because it's also what we do, right? We risk.
Absolutely.
Because
we need patient protections for sure
Yeah,
as well.
patients, worker protection
worker
as well
protection.
as reciprocity. Like
Get rid of the drug tests.
yeah.
Wow, thank you. Such important points. Jessica, did you have any words for nurses that would like to do what you guys are doing?
Well, for me, it was mainly just talking about it, being more vocal. I was even vocal when I was still working in dialysis, and it made me find my niche. It really helped me figure out where I wanted to be in this space. And so I started posting about it. I started not just educating myself, but the education that I was learning, I was putting it out there. And, when I first started, you'd get like 2 or 3 people that you thought were paying attention. And then, it slowly starts growing and people start listening. And I've been blessed to be able to have like messages, from mentors, nursing mentors that I've known for years, hey, Jess, I hear that you're in this space. Can you help me out? Like I'm here. And just people that I couldn't even imagine would ever message me asking me questions, about my path and about, cannabis and what am I doing with my yoga. And they're messaging me and they're asking questions and they're being more vocal too. And I've even had some people that, I went to a Southern Baptist high school, and I've had some people from our school, teachers and principals that have come to me and asked me, and they're like, I'm embarrassed, but I like to use medical cannabis, what can I do? And I'm like, just being vocal about it, being vocal and being open, be who you are unapologetically. And people are gonna listen. The right people will start coming to you and you'll start attracting the right people and it'll just evolve. Be open to it and let it evolve into whatever, so.
Thank you. Okay, I would like you each to have a chance to tell people how they can find you, how they can follow you, how they can reach you. And then if we have time, I would love to get you guys a chance to ask your questions. So how can people get in touch with you and how can they find you?
Hi there. So I'm Nurse Laura. My website and my Instagram and my everything is Ask Nurse Laura. So asknurselora.com. Instagram is @AskNurseLaura. You get the point. Also, we talked about all of these great organizations for nurses. We also have the National Clinical Director Consortium, which includes nurses, pharmacists, and providers. So we're bringing together all types of health professionals who are supporting patients in the cannabis and plant medicine space. So that's nationalclinicaldirector.org. But if you find me, it's all underneath my name. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will preface this by saying that my website and all has the correct information, but I'm not a huge fan of keeping it updated. I am a much more one-on-one kind of gal. So stop me, I have my cards, but my company is Compassionate Care Nursing Services. It's ccns.health, and that's what my Instagram is. I also run online private, it's called Potluck Book Club, and we review all types of books on cannabis, the history, books for children, books on sex and cannabis, books on, so all kinds of stuff, and it's a lot of fun, but again, educational. But yeah.
So my website's evolving, so, but you can find me on Facebook. My name's Jessica Morel with 2 L's, just like the mushroom. And on Instagram, I'm Silly Nurse PSI.
My business is Entourage Consulting Services. It's entourageconsulting.net, not .com, not .health, .net. Biggest mistake. Just send a little note that you'd like to talk to me, and I will get right back to you as soon as possible. And I can be reached at Dawn Marie at entourageconsulting.net as well.
Awesome, thank you. So I think we have time for a couple questions from the audience. Yes, let's start with you. If you.
Thank you. So nice to be with everybody. And I'm from Melbourne, about 3.5 hours up there. Wondering how long y'all think it's going to be before the medical professionals are mandated to have to learn about the endocannabinoidome and everything else.
That's when you know.
Because it's got to
Well,
start
we already
with
have the
mandates, doesn't
nurses,
it?
the nurses have already been mandated that they have to know this.
But they
they're
don't.
not enforcing anything
It-
because it's still federally illegal.
And they're not teaching it.
They're not teaching it in medical schools. There are college classes now you can take for a master's and pay
Yep.
25, 30 grand.
Yep.
But they're not teaching it in elementary school biology yet. They're not teaching it in high school. They're not teaching it in, college or nursing programs.
Most of us up here do education for providers too, though. If you
Yeah,
reach out to
we're
any of us,
educating the providers right
we'll
now.
educate
Exactly.
the providers for you.
Okay, so I understand that Moffitt may have been the first hospital in Florida to actually start allowing patients to use when they're in there for their treatments, cancer treatments and whatnot. That was several years ago. And then I also heard a doctor say that he was getting a few insurance payments on his patients. So, and that was before COVID, and he was down here in Miami. So things are moving, but I'm not seeing doctors.
I don't know, I see him moving
Learning.
backwards.
It's backwards.
Yeah,
It's
I
very
see him moving backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, right now, it's like with the past couple of months, it seems things have drastically taken a turn backwards.
Psychedelics seem to have a better opportunity,
yeah.
honestly. They're
Yeah.
fast-tracked.
Right. Well, we're still dealing with quite a lot of stigma, aren't we? So, like you said, it's a lot about speaking up about your personal experience
Right.
and the education and continuing to break these stigmas. Yes.
Hi everyone, I'm Ariel Kamen from Philadelphia, actually a registered nurse myself. My question is, principles of pharmacology, lowest effective dose. What does it look like when there's an effective dose of cannabis, like from people that you've worked with? That's a good question.
Well, first of all, as nurses, we're not allowed to give specific dosage. It's not in our scope of practice. There's walkarounds about that, but with cannabis in general, the go slow, start low, go slow, but don't be afraid to go high is very true. It's so individualistic. I know Dustin Sulak, who's a doctor out of Maine, who has a lot of free information, good information. He always talks about how the majority of a therapeutic dose is less than 10 milligrams for most people. Some people, and children in particular, maybe need hundreds of milligrams to be beneficial, but it's so individualistic. That's why it's so important to really start and pay attention and be in tune with your own body. So if you don't have an experience talking with yourself and paying attention to yourself, it makes it very difficult to be able to sense, oh, this is a difference. This is, I'm getting there. Or, hey, whatever I was taking this for has subsided. That's my therapeutic dose. And you may get benefit by blowing past it, but you may also have some things go on that aren't so beneficial. So rushing through it is not going to get you there if you're truly trying to use it therapeutically. Yeah, there's not a dose. It's not a take 2 of these and call me in the morning. That's why it's so important for the education. That's why it's going sideways so much because, say you have cancer. Cancer patient most commonly goes to a dispensary and they're told, oh, you have cancer, you need RSO oil. That's a true RSO is 1,000 milligrams. Very few people can handle 1,000 milligrams, And so people have experiences that are horrifying, and then I tried it and it was awful. Right. Well, you didn't try it properly, and it could have saved somebody's life instead of so.
And we're not throwing the dispensary staff under the bus. They're doing the best they can with what they know, with what is the most common knowledge. But that's why you need healthcare professionals in this space.
Yeah, you need the guidance of a nurse for sure.
Educated healthcare professionals.
Yeah, for sure.
And I forgot what else.
The way I look at it is this: I'm already committing a federal crime. So, I'm not as worried about the, rules of my license. So afterwards, I can tell you what I do. I do some dosaging. But I base it basically, honestly, on the pharmaceutical model we have. Marinol is synthetic THC. The dosages of Marinol you can get are 2.5, 5, and 10, okay, in a pill. So I start most of my patients, unless they're under 150 pounds, a very small person or a child or whatever, I'll usually tell a person, this will get you the feeling in your head that you want to be familiar with at 2.5. Sometimes they need 5 to get that, okay? But I start at 2.5, start low, go slow. That's what we're taught. As far as CBD goes, or measurements of CBD, most of the products that I've dealt with start with a therapeutic dosage of about 10 to 20 milligrams of CBD. 10 doesn't tend to do it for most people, so I will start somebody on a pain regimen at 20 milligrams of CBD.
Thank you.
And usually, let's also say this, whole plant medicine is very important.
Very important.
Isolates are they have their purpose, but as far as the holistic aspect of human health, whole plant is the key to everything, whether it be mushrooms, cannabis, or anything else.
So much wisdom up here on the stage, so I encourage you to mob them all when we get off. But I think, Dennis, do we have time for one more question, or how are we going? One more question, Jason.
So, like Nurse Laura was saying, when doctors and nurses are prescribing elderly patients cannabis, they typically just go indica, sativa, high THC, low THC. How much are people considering the different types of terpenes, like terpinolene and myrcene and those things?
Beta-caryophyllene, limonene, all of it.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And again, ancient medicine, the original plant, maybe we did have true sativas, true indicas. I actually opened the grow facility in Maryland, so I really have done the growing process too. And most of our strains are not, the original strain from Thailand. They're a blend of something that's a hybrid of something, and so nothing is truly a sativa or an indica anymore. But if you're not familiar, sativa usually, in theory, means daytime-ish, and indica means in the couch, nighttime-ish. But really, what makes it that nowadays is really what those terpenes, right, which is another composition of the plant, aside from the cannabinoids, which are the THC and the CBD and the CBG and the and each of those terpenes, which you can just Google it, the terpenes and what they do, and some terpenes are more for daytime and more uplifting, and some terpenes are more for pain and more for sleep and more for relaxation, and they have a huge place. And if you're lucky enough to live in a state, maybe you're in Florida, that has lab testing and actually shows you the terpenes, that's beautiful. If you're not, it's kind of challenging because you can smell it. But that's much more challenging. We're really lucky. In many states, we do have the terpene testing, and you can see kind of what the percentages are and then guide yourself based on that. But there's a lot of good free information about just what the terpenes do online that you can then use to kind of add to your toolbox.
That's one of the best tips I give to patients is learn what terpenes benefit you. Because right now, you may get granddaddy blueberry Kush birthday cake. Right? But if you know kind of the terpenes in a traditional Kush and in a blueberry, then you'll have a sense of what also some of those terpenes might be. And so it's really important to, as you begin to use the medicine, you learn what works for you and pay attention, because then you don't have to worry about, okay, what's this one calling this? You'll have a sense of what's in it and whether, that's probably going to help me, or I need to really stay away from this one. So terpenes are what drives the effect. So it's key. And while in Florida here, we do have lab testing that will list it, it doesn't trickle up to those that sell it. Right. So again, as a patient, no matter what you're doing, you need to take ownership and advocate for yourself and take responsibility for yourself, and it takes work.
Oh, and one word,
or get a
leafly.
nurse.
Yes.
if you ever do find those terpenes that work for you and they are out of your strain, go to Leafly, okay, just to get an idea. And they have this great identification tool that will actually link up the terpenes that you want and tell you familiar strains with that level of terpenes that you're looking for. It's got a great identification tool in there.
Let's give it up for these. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us, and
Thank you,
please
guys.
follow them and follow up with them. Thank you.
Wow, that was awesome. I mean, I knew they were awesome, but together it's super awesome. So, yeah, we'll give a few moments for photos here. Make sure if there's anyone you really want to tap in with, just flag them down and say what's up. It's the best way to do it. And the next panel we have coming up shortly is going to be on psychedelic policy reform, or policy reform at large, which a lot of what we're talking about today wouldn't be possible unless we had some of these activists who are going to be stepping up and contributing to policy reform. So, right on. So this is a clarion call to the next panelist to come up. What's up? How we doing? I almost wore the same thing, man. That would have been awkward, huh? No, this is great. Oh, we got puppers in the house. Oh man, I miss my dog right now. Yeah. Everybody having a good time so far? You guys learning a lot? Yeah? I am, for sure. Cool. Okay. So, yeah, heavy hitters left and right. Thank you, Kaya. Appreciate Kaya. I really like her. So, yeah. Cool. Again, my name's Dennis Walker. I host the Mycopreneur podcast. I've been tasked with being the MC, kind of tying together the different panels, and I'm wearing a bunch of different hats today. Also shilling for sponsors. Wisdom, one of the sponsors. Shout out Psychedelics Today, title sponsors. Shout out Cookies, right? A lot of great people came together to put this event on, so make sure you thank them so we can, do this again next year, hopefully all over the place. All right, so gonna have a minute to decompress now. I got a mushroom joke right now. I don't know if this is the crowd for it. I'm doing stand-up comedy on Saturday, so I might have to save it, but I'm gonna go for it. You guys anybody know the strain albino penis envy? Anybody familiar with apes? Anybody know why they call it albino penis envy? Because no one would believe it if you called it white penis envy. All right. Zingers left and right. All right. Yeah, it seems like a mature audience here. All right, welcome up to the stage. I haven't met these gentlemen yet, but I'm looking forward to it. We've got Gary Smith, Esquire, and Greg Lake. Gary Smith is an author from Psychedelic Lex, and Greg Lake from EntheoConnect. I'll let you gentlemen take it away, and I'll get out of here. Here, take a hug.
Should we No, it's fine.